on the...
Look,
go ahead, Mr. Speaker. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, no, they ought to call him in if the Democrats want to boycott it because they're afraid of the truth. Let them boycott it. But for the Republican chairman to not act decisively and to not, frankly, if necessary, run over the left-wing anti-Trump faction, strikes me as that's why the base is frustrated with Republicans in Congress. Provide leadership. Take decisive action. Be in charge.
Well, speaking of frustration, there's obviously a lot of frustration about how the media's coverage of this so-called Russian narrative. The Washington Post first scooped this idea that Jared Kushner had colluded or tried to find a back channel. But it was based on an anonymous letter sent in December to the paper. And some are asking now, where is this anonymous letter, and why won't the Washington Post publish this anonymous letter if their entire story, or most of it, is premised on this physical existing document? Shouldn't the onus be on them to at some point, prove they have evidence?
You know, that entire story tells you how hysterical and how deeply anti-Trump the elite media has become. The fact is, first of all, that informal communications is a deep part of diplomacy. Folks tend to forget that in the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was an ABC correspondent meeting with the head of the KGB in Washington, which created the back channel that helped us avoid a nuclear war. Nobody thought that was bad. The elite media wants to forget that Obama created back channels to Iran. At the time, of course, they all thought Obama was wonderful, so it must have been a good idea. Richard Nixon created a back channel to communist China. You can go down item after item like this and you say to yourself, surely the Washington Post has somebody with a sense of history who understands how stupid their stories have become. And they use language like bombshell. Was it a bombshell when John F. Kennedy did it? Was it a bombshell when Barack Obama did it? This is just one more symptom of the pathology of the left and the fact that they frankly have lost all touch with reality.
Mr. Speaker, I want to get your take on what the writer for the National Review says about all of this, because it's an interesting theory. He says, look, this just blew up in the Democrats' face. The fact that if Jared Kushner was trying to set up a back channel, and it actually, we now know, didn't happen, and it was happening around December, then doesn't that shoot a hole in the narrative about Russian collusion months ahead of time? That if there was no back channel and was not set up, then where was the back channel during the campaign? What do you make of the National Review's piece?
Well, I had the same conversation with a reporter the other day who said to me, isn't this a part of the whole question of whether or not Russia affected the election? And I said, the date of the meeting is a month after the election. And you could see his brain stop. He had, oh yeah, that's right, isn't it? I mean, right. This whole thing is, look, the elite media wakes up in the morning, they know Donald Trump is guilty, they just don't know what he's guilty of today. Sure. They know something terrible happened for Donald Trump, they just don't know what it is today. And that's how they start. They've already written the horrible thing happened today, now they've got to put in some fact as the anchor for the story.
They try to find one, absolutely. Last week, Mr. Speaker, the President tweeted he's going to make a decision about whether the United States will be in or out on the Paris Climate Accord. There's a lot of chatter this morning about what he may or may not do. From your position as someone who understands the consequences of arrangements like this, also the thinking of this White House, where do you think the President comes down on this?
Well, I hope he comes down on pulling out. I think he just got a letter from 22 senators, led by Senator Mitch McConnell, asking him to pull out. You know, Republicans have to get on a habit. If you say something's terrible when the other team does it, then when you're in charge, get rid of it. Don't suddenly say, well, that really was terrible, but now we've got to be responsible, and we can't really do this. He has the power to pull out. Pull out. It will be a real signal to the world that, in fact, we have changed. We are putting American interests first. There are things we can negotiate, but we don't need to be involved in gigantic multinational projects in which more money is spent by diplomats traveling than is spent doing good.
But yet you wrote a book, Understanding Trump. Ivanka Trump is not on board with that. She has wanted the United States to remain in the Paris Climate Accords, and other members of his administration have wanted him to remain in the Paris Climate Accords, Rex Tillerson among them. What do you make of that?
Look, I think it's perfectly healthy in an administration to have an argument over policy. Reagan, all through the period in which he was defeating the Soviet Empire, had different people in his administration arguing. At times, his Secretary of Defense and his Secretary of State were deeply in disagreement. Ironically, usually the Secretary of State more interested in using force and the Secretary of Defense being more cautious. But I think it's perfectly natural to have these tensions. It's good for a president to listen to everybody. He shouldn't just blindly go ahead. But my hunch is when he's done listening to everybody, he's going to stick with his gut instinct and he's going to pull out.
Mr. Speaker,